All right. So today is Tuesday, October 3rd, 2023. This is the City Council meeting. I am going to call this to order. Notice is hereby given to the members of the City Council and to the general public that at this regular meeting, the City Council may vote to go into executive session, which will not be open to the public, for discussion and consultation with the city's attorneys for legal advice on any item listed on the following agenda. Can I have roll call?
Mayor Daggett,
Here.
Vice Mayor Aslan,
Present.
Councilmember Harris,
Here.
Councilmember House,
Here.
Councilmember Matthews,
Here.
Councilmember McCarthy,
Here.
Councilmember Sweet.
Here. Wonderful, thank you. So moving down to item number 3, Councilmember Matthews, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
It would be my pleasure, Mayor. Anyone who can stand, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you. And Councilmember House, would you read our mission statement?
Thank you, Mayor. The mission of the City of Flagstaff is to protect and enhance the quality of life for all.
Thank you. And Councilmember McCarthy, our land acknowledgement.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. The Flagstaff City Council humbly acknowledges the ancestral homelands of this area's indigenous nations and original stewards. These lands, still inhabited by Native descendants, border mountains sacred to indigenous peoples. We honor them, their legacies, their traditions, and their continued contributions. We celebrate their past, present, and future generations who will forever know this place as home.
Thank you. All right, before we move on to public participation, staff knows, but I'd just like to make sure that the public knows that I am virtual, as is Councilmember Sweet and Vice Mayor Aslan, as we are at a International Downtown Alliance Conference in Chicago, so we are all joining remotely. So item number 4, public participation. This is the public's chance to address council about an item that is not on the agenda. Comments related to items that are on the agenda will be taken at the time that the item is discussed. If you wish to address the council at tonight's meeting, please complete a comment card, which is located in the back of the room, and submit it to the recording clerk as soon as possible. Your name will be called when it's your turn to speak. You may address council up to 3 times throughout the meeting, including your comments made during public participation. And please limit your remarks to 3 minutes. You'll see a clock timer in front of you. And City Clerk, would you help manage the public participation, since I can't see the comment cards, and call people to speak?
Happy to do so, Mayor. We'll go ahead and call our first commenter, Jonathan Diacio.
Hello, Council. Thank you for having me. So I just want to speak on the issue of discrimination in Flagstaff. Me, myself, I'm from New York City. I came out here to go to college, NAU, studying computer science, and my goal was to be able to create a medical portal so I could help people that are being human trafficked through these medical centers in Arizona. And anyway, since I've been out here, I have been not only witnessed other people, but I have myself been subject to discrimination and what I would call racism and prejudice, which is so bad at this point that it has actually reduced me to poverty. I have had my rights violated not only by the Flagstaff Police Department, but by the Northern Arizona University Police Department. They've been issuing me cruel and unusual directives, suggestions, and punishments. They've arrested me just to go to court and have all charges dropped. This is a part of something that started very small when I got here. And every time I made a complaint, every time I brought it to somebody, I got punished for asking for help. Even in the school, where I would plead with the school, please help. There's discrimination going on out here. God, please help. And they continue to just find something wrong and then violate your rights somehow. The reason why this needs to be taken into account is because the things that you guys are suggesting, and some of these things I know are supposed to be in service to the community and in service to those who don't have, I think it's like 3 to 9% of, I don't know the exact numbers, but I know it's little, of minorities actually have established properties and resources and very solid streams of income. And that's because there is a systemic sort of thing that's kind of in the system that is continuing to push people down. And what they're doing as a result of this discrimination is these people are not able to get social justice help because the attorneys and the lawyers and all these people, they won't take certain cases. So they're being pushed into mental health. And as a result of that, you have a bunch of misdiagnoses and a bunch of people who don't have these sorts of problems that they're being marked with. So I would just call it to your guys' attention that there's a very big discrimination problem out here, and it's bigger than you think because a lot of people, they don't get a chance to speak. So that's it. Thank you. Is that how, just walk away? Okay.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Stephen Poor.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council. Last Wednesday, I was over at the meeting held by NAH, and I brought to their attention something that I think the council needs to consider too. You look at a lot of long-term forecasting and long-term growth issues, and I'm no demographic genius, but it took me a half hour to find 3 different very good opinions with regards to what the long-term growth in this region might be. And number one I came across is something called the Arizona Regional Economic Analysis Project. Looked at the population growth from 1969 to 2021. For the last 52 years plus, if you broke it down in decades, Flagstaff's MSA grew in the 70s at 4.4%, the 80s 2.6%, the 90s 1.9%, the 2000s 1.5%, 2010 0.9%, last 2 years minus 0.04%. Underneath these numbers, the state, the U.S. is growing slower than Flagstaff's MSA. So I decided to take a look. Without getting into details of the numbers, there's a fertility rate that you need to look at. That's at 1.79. For the population to grow, we need 2.1. It hasn't been there for almost a decade. And it's forecasted not to recover. By the time we get to 2050, we'll have 0 population growth. That comes from the Brookings Institute. That comes from the CBO. That comes from other noted demographics. So the whole forecast from NAH, when I brought this up to them, was they expected a doubling of the population in Flagstaff MSA by 2050. The CBO earlier this year, the Congressional Budget Office, suggested we're going to have population growth in this country of 10% in that time frame. 10%. 1/10 of what the forecast was from NAH. And looking at these demographic numbers and the fertility rate, I'm I just caution that there's probably no way in hell we're going to reach a doubling. And we need to use some realistic forecasts, and I urge you to reach out to the Brookings Institute, reach out to every demographic people you can. Just don't rely on somebody, and understand what's behind those numbers. That's your responsibility, not to be experts, but to go seek out the experts. And I urge you to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Daniel Folk.
Good afternoon. My name is Dan Folk. I'm the Community Development Director for the city, and I'm here to share some recognition that happened last month. So on September 7th, the Arizona chapter of the American Planning Association held its annual awards luncheon, and it's part of the annual planning conference. This year it was down in Litchfield Park. And so the city was recognized, I should say 2 folks who live in the city were recognized. The first was our 10-year housing plan was given honorable mention in the master plan, project study, or transportation plan category. And so that was a long one. It included a lot of different plans. What was recognized was the thoroughness of the process, the public engagement, the very clear goals and policies that were produced in that plan. And so congratulations to our housing team, Sarah Dar, Justina Costa, and Jennifer Michelson, who was there to receive the award. I can tell you that I also emceed the award ceremony. I was part of the review committee, and there were 9 members, and there were no gimmies in this program. Every submittal is scrutinized, and it's not an automatic award, so they're very well deserved. The second recognition was for a distinguished citizen planner, and so I'm very pleased to share Devonna McLaughlin was given that award as a distinguished citizen planner. And just as part of the reason why, Devonna has served on the Flagstaff Housing Commission since its inception in 2019. She was one of the leaders in preparing and requesting the 2020 Housing Emergency Declaration, which of course led to our 10-year housing plan. That was one of the requirements of the declaration. Devonna and the commission prepared and recommended the housing bond measure, Proposition 442, which was successful, obviously, in November of 2022. And as if that were not enough, of course, Devonna is the CEO of Housing Solutions of Northern Arizona, where she's been with that organization for 18 years. And so very well represented at the conference, and congratulations to our staff as well as Devonna, who happens to be here tonight. Thank you.
Mayor, our last speaker is Andy Fernandez.
Hello, Andy Fernandez, 2602 North Main Street. Been in Flagstaff all my life, Army Corps of Engineers. Now I have some serious issues I need to discuss here. First of all, how many of you out there voted and stipulated that we should have transparency when you ran for council? Now, out of all the people who said yes, how many of you actually stipulated and have heard what I've been saying for the last 14 plus years? When I was a representative for Sarah, who ran for mayor. I campaigned for her. Many people in this area knew who I was. They know who I am. I ran for mayor here and for congressman in 2002 against Rick Renzi, who was from Virginia, not even from the state of Arizona. That was an illegal George Bush cartel nepotism manipulation. Jimmy McCarthy, he's been around here for a while. Actually, I campaigned for him, got him in the office. But anyway, the scenario is that these meetings are illegal when up to 5 years ago, they pushed it down to 4 o'clock, and now it's 3 p.m.? Who can appear at the meetings? Nobody. Now the scenario here, the gentleman talked about the MSA numbers from 1970 all the way to 2020 to present. Well, we have a situation where City of Flagstaff in 1999 facilitated a scenario for a so-called lie of affordable housing. Now that was manipulation was situated for, and I was all appeased, and I was all for it. I was pushing forward, campaigning for it, just like I did for the bond for $34 million for the teachers to get more pay wages. Well, the corruption is that all these propositions, that's why I always say no on any proposition. They manipulate scenarios, it's called an STM. If you can substantiate S, then T, 2, M equals manipulate, excuse and lies, and the sheep will buy it. Well, the media is controlled by the Republican Party, the GOP cartel. They own over 96% of the mainstream media, and they want to come out with their lies and excuses to shut down social media. That's just because they want to corner the market, because they've facilitated, manipulated antitrust laws for many decades, for over 120 years. Now, the other gentleman said something about the mental illness scenario. Yes, I mentioned that too. A few years ago, I went to the hospital. They wanted me mandated to. I said that I wanted to go get mentally checked out, because I said, no. I said, I already know the game. You guys lost over $17 million, and now if you can acquire all these numbers to go back into the system, then you can get those monies reallocated. And this is all scams and lies. So now the scenario is that we have a scenario where 480, that's another money grab. The hospital saying, oh, part one, yeah, we're just going to do this and this, but part two is in the processes, and that stipulates that it can expand and grow to such extreme without any limitations. And that's good. And we have limited water, and that's another money grab by the nepotism of the
Thank you, Mr.
Chamber of Commerce and the rest of the corrupt rats. Vote no.
Mayor, that was our last public comment.
Thank you. All right, we are moving down to proclamations and recognitions. We have a proclamation for Indigenous Peoples Day, and I've asked Council Member Matthews to read that and present it.
Come stand up here. We have Co-Chair Toya from the Indigenous Commission and our coordinator through the city, Rose Tohi. And Commissioner Karihai. Thank you so much for joining us. And before I start, we have a great Indigenous Peoples Day on Monday, correct? It's Monday. Over at the Elks Lodge. It's going to be a fun, informative day, so I hope to see you all there. What are the hours, Rose? 9 to 2:30, so please join us. So this is a proclamation for Indigenous Peoples Day. The City of Flagstaff recognizes that it is built on lands known, inhabited, loved, and respected by Indigenous people since the time immemorial. The City of Flagstaff was built and is still energized and maintained and shaped today with Indigenous peoples' knowledge, labor, technology, science, philosophy, arts, and commerce. Advocating for and supporting actions that led to the advancement of social and environmental justice for Indigenous communities per City Council goals and objectives for 2017 through 2024, the City of Flagstaff understands that government entities, organizations, and public institutions have a responsibility to enact policy, to combat racism, and to build justice and equity for Indigenous people and all people who suffer from the effects of prejudice and discrimination. The observance of Columbus Day is a celebration of assimilation, acculturation, genocide against the Indigenous people. To this end, city officials and residents throughout Flagstaff and the surrounding areas participated in a 2016 and 2017 in a series of Indigenous community forums to hear the concerns and ideas of Indigenous people and adopt the strategy and recommendation that came from these forums. The City of Flagstaff resolved in 2018 to support efforts to educate the public about historic and contemporary Indigenous human rights concerns, and to honor its Indigenous roots by becoming better stewards of the land it is built upon. The City of Flagstaff, mayor and council members hereby recognize and renew the commitment between the City of Flagstaff and the indigenous nations and communities of northern Arizona to work together for the benefit of all. Now, therefore, on behalf of Mayor Becky Daggett, Mayor of the City of Flagstaff, Arizona, I do by proclaim October 9th, 2023 as Indigenous Peoples' Day. And then we'll do pictures, or do pictures first and then. Thank you. Oh, you want to say something?
You want to go over this, or do you want me to? Go ahead. Yeah, I'll start. All right. Thank you, Diane. Yeah, don't you have? That's our greeting in Dene. It is good. That's what it means. Yat and then also Akeha is thank you. I just want to share with you what our day is going to be like on Monday, and we really appreciate the fact that we are honoring our people, what we call matriarchal voices and leadership, through reflecting, honoring, and resilience. So we're going to start at 9 o'clock at the Elks Lodge, and we have people coming in. We have our Honorable Navajo Nation Council Delegate, Amber Crotty, who is going to talk about the missing and murdered Indigenous relatives, and then the work that is being done through Navajo Nation. And then we have another person from Yavapai Nation, the Garden of Life. She's going to be talking around that subject. And then traditional teaching on corn from the Hopi and Tohono O'odham person, Dr. Luann Leonard, who's going to be doing that. And then we're also going to have a young person from the Chiricahua Apache. She is going to talk about what Indigenous Peoples' Day means to her. And she's a young 19-year-old young professional that has really been growing in her activism. And then we also have a board member from the National Institute of Law and Justice who's going to talk about the sacredness of women. This also deals with having to do with missing and murdered Indigenous relatives and what's being done at the national level. And then, of course, we have our co-chair, Toya. She's going to be, her and her team are going to be preparing a traditional food lunch, so we're really happy about that. And then we're also going to unveil our new Native American Heritage Month flag. And then we're going to have also 2 cultural shares through dances. There's a group from the high school who's going to be putting on a dance through their cultural means, a Hopi group. And then we're also going to have the Apache crown dancers from Sibiku who's going to be visiting us, and that will end our day. So we really hope that you'll all come out. And there's a lot of things that we're doing through the city, through our community, Indigenous community members. Everything that we do is a step by step. We're not gonna. There's a lot of things that still need attention, and with every little step, things are gained, and I really appreciate the city for that, and as well as our community members who are involved and who are participating in a lot of these talks with our city departments and different projects that are going on. Thank you, Akehat. I'd like to extend the invitation to the public for the luncheon on Indigenous Peoples' Day. It is gathering for the whole community. Everyone is invited. Food is available for everyone, so please join us on that day. We extend the invitation. Thank you all. Askoli Gona.
Thank you.
See you on Monday, or tomorrow, video.
All right, moving down to council liaison reports. I will start with Councilmember Matthews.
I need to pull it up. Can you skip me and make me last?
Yes, I will move on to Councilmember Harris.
Mayor, I don't have any report at this time.
Thank you. And Vice Mayor Aslan?
Sure, Mayor, thank you. A couple things real quickly. Tourism Commission meeting did not have a quorum, so that meeting did not materialize. Sustainability meeting happened on Thursday. That was a good conversation. We also had our annual field trip with the Colorado, the Coconino Plateau Water Advisory Partnership. And we went up to Page area. We spoke with some tribal water directors, some tour operators out of Antelope Canyon. We spent the afternoon with Mayor Bill Dyack over in Page and had a good time hanging out around Glen Canyon Dam. Ron Doba, our coordinator, was named a Arizona Leader of the Year by the Arizona Capital Times. So we celebrated his recognition a little bit and had a very good afternoon just being with some NU students and discussing water issues up on the plateau. It was a nice day for case study and actual getting out in the field and seeing how all these water policies and all these water philosophies come together in the real world under our feet. And right now, as Mayor Daggett mentioned, with the contingent that's in Chicago this week for the International Downtown Association annual conference, looking into best practices for downtowns big and small, and coordinating with our Downtown Business Alliance and our own city staff in terms of downtown infrastructure. Looking forward to some very good conversations, some great networking, and a very hot and muggy time here actually in Chicago this week. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilmember Matthews, do you have something?
I do, thank you, Mayor. At our last Mountain Line Board meeting, a couple of the highlights, and I'll share this with Councilmember Sweet, she can do part of it, but Mountain Line has developed a scorecard to capture key performance indicators that will be annually evaluated to evaluate performance in 6 areas of our strategic plan. These include on-time performance for buses, total emissions, which is very important to the city, employee engagement, accident record, community value, and leverage of local funding. Also, our ridership is 20% higher than last fiscal year, and staff is projecting to reach 2019 riderships levels in 2026. Also, in the 2023 annual report has been adopted. This report includes the systems performance measures and looks at actual financial data. Mountain Line continues to receive 6 of the 6 mall transit intensive cities federal funding measures and an extra $3 million to offset local revenues needed to operate for operations and campaign programs. So I'll turn the rest over to Councilmember Sweet.
Thank you, Councilmember Matthews. Councilmember McCarthy, do you have anything?
I do, Mayor, thank you. As you remember, Mayor, you and I and Councilmember Sweet had a meeting with Amtrak this last week, and we discussed all kinds of things like what the ridership is, and it's actually more significant than a lot of people realize. A lot of people get on and off Amtrak here in Flagstaff on the route that goes from Chicago to LA. And it was a very good meeting. They reported that the Senate is totally on board for full Amtrak funding, but there's concerns that the House of Representatives may want to make significant cuts to the Amtrak budget, and this is in light of the FAA, which does airlines, and they're already fully funded. But anyway, it was a very interesting and productive meeting. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Sweet, do you have anything?
I do. Thank you, Mayor. Let me get my camera on. So I am one of the council members in Chicago at the IDA conference, and I'm looking forward to some great discussion and collaboration. To tag on to the Mountain Line report, we're excited to let you all know that the 2 electric buses are both on the road and working and doing great. So please go out and get a ride on one of them. And I will be attending the MetroPlan meeting this Thursday. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember House.
Thank you, Mayor. We had the Housing Commission meeting at the end of last month. There was an introduction of a few new commissioners, as well as the election of a new chair, Devonna McLaughlin, and a new vice chair, Sandy Flores, so congratulations to them. There was also conversation about the advancing of the Community Home Buyer Assistance and Employer Assisted Housing Program, and a continued movement on the draft incentive bond program. So we'll be hearing more about both of those things coming up here soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. And I don't really have anything. I'm just looking forward to the Commission on Inclusion and Adaptive Living giving us a great presentation that they put together at our next meeting. So we're moving down now to item number 7, consent agenda. All matters under the consent agenda are considered by the City Council to be routine unless a City Council member expresses a desire at this meeting to remove an item from the consent agenda for discussion. We will make one motion to approve the entire agenda. So, and also, unless otherwise indicated, expenditures approved by council are budgeted items. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 4 items under our consent agenda. Is there anyone who would like to pull out any one of these for discussion? All right, I don't hear anyone saying that they would, so I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Mayor, this is Jim McCarthy. I would like to move that we approve the consent agenda. That's items 7A, B, C, and D on the agenda.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Thank you.
I'll second.
Is there any Thank you. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, thank you. That motion carries. So we're moving down now to the regular agenda. Item number 8A, consideration and approval of budget adjustment for the fiscal year 2023-24 budget adjustment for housing incentive program funds with possible allocation of incentive funds for affordable housing within Block 1 of the Timber Sky final block plat. Staff, do we have a presentation from you all?
Good evening, Mayor. Greg Clifton here. I'll be joined by Brandy Suda, and we'll do a short presentation on this. Hope things are going well in Chicago. Thanks for being here virtually. Before we get into the mechanics of this, perhaps a little explanation as to why we're doing this, and then we'll get into the what. On this subject of why, and specifically why am I, as your city manager, speaking to this matter, I'll offer some comments. And in doing so, I'd like to at least generalize for a bit. Sterling, if I may stray slightly on this, I promise to bring it back. I want to also thank those, we had a couple of letters come in on this, and thank you to the authors of those letters. They were largely supportive. Some concerns were expressed in suggestions. I will not speak for the letters. You should have them in your packet. But the one letter did suggest that perhaps the city's involvement in this matter was a result of some effective lobbying efforts by a private developer. And I guess I see the opportunity and the need here to clarify, in doing so, just explain again why it is I'm involved. As your city manager, my office has had firsthand engagement in a multitude of projects and programs over the years, largely in the realm of problem solving, but it kind of runs the spectrum. And I'd like to reference a few of these just to illustrate that point. These come to you courtesy of my thought process at 3 a.m. This morning. A few years ago, we refinanced the unfunded public pension liability to the tune of $130 million, solving a very large and complex problem that was encumbering our general fund and creating some budgetary constraints on a yearly basis. In doing so, we very effectively saved this community millions and millions of dollars, at present net value of that being somewhere around $76 million. But more importantly, or equally as important, we unencumbered the general fund, lowering our labor costs by significant double-digit numbers over the years. That in turn has enabled us to do other things. We'll talk a little bit more about the refinance here in a second. I mentioned it very deliberately because it factors into tonight's discussion. Around that same time, we implemented a recession plan that was in anticipation of a problem, not necessarily in response to it. But no sooner than the ink was dry on that than we implemented it. Of course, we did not foresee the global pandemic, and with that pandemic came a short recession, and we were prepared for that. Totally randomly here, we saw the need to do something at the airport parking lots. Parking behavior was at an all-time low, people parking in the forest, and always wondering what our visitors to the Flagstaff community would think when they leave the terminal and see cars parked around in the forest. Kind of like you don't need a parking space to park here, all you need is a pine tree. But we took care of that, and just recently, council implemented that new parking pay structure, and both lots are complete and functioning well. We have instituted long-term contracts regarding the use of city buildings for community services such as Theatricos, Boys and Girls Club, Murdoch Center, and the list goes on. We instituted long-term service contracts for some of our service providers, including the High Country Humane Society and also Flagstaff Shelter Services. We responded to serious flooding in Spruce Wash and Highway 180 with a lot of short-term and long-term mitigation. We have provided an access easement to some of our friends and residents out at Grandview who lost access to the front of their house because of these sandbags. We enhanced our downtown with flower boxes. We are in the process of repurposing a vacant fire station in the Sunnyside neighborhood. We helped implement a policy regarding sex trafficking in our vice operations at the police department. We also got involved in funding and prioritizing new digesters at the Rio wastewater plant. We secured funding and solidification of our partnerships regarding the Rio de Flag flood control project, very important to this community. And then last year, we orchestrated and oversaw the Citizen Bond Committee, which successfully advanced to council a couple of measures that were then successfully voted upon. One of those, of course, being Proposition 442 regarding affordable housing. On the issue of affordable housing, our office was involved in the formulation of an incentive policy years ago regarding pertaining to reduced parking infrastructure and other zoning requirements for projects that provided 100% affordable housing. That was largely put into place to accommodate the Foundation for Senior Living project, which is still in the works. I mentioned that all of this, and it's just a sampling to illustrate one very important point. Our office gets involved in projects throughout the organization, and there is no methodology or prescription as to why we do. Generally speaking, when matters are necessary and time is of the essence, and we feel we can assist and do so to bring about effective and quick resolution, we do so. We do not do so to intrude upon others' areas of discipline or areas of expertise, but rather we do so collaboratively, again, in the interest of seeing things through to completion. And that brings us to this topic. When we refinanced the unfunded pension liability 4 years ago, we immediately saw the savings of dollars rather than the expenditure of dollars. We were losing ground on that particular liability, and with the refinance package, we started seeing savings immediately. Some of those savings were funneled right back into the general fund as a contingency fund. And I'm going to let Brandy speak to that in a minute because it pertains to the source of funding that is before you tonight. I will generalize and let you know that what is in front of you on this is two things, twofold. First, approving the transfer of a budget appropriation from that general fund contingency, and Brandy will speak to the mechanics of this, into the Affordable Housing Incentive Program, and that amount would be $1,100,000, $1.1 million. The second item would be to ask council to approve, staff under my office, but staff as a whole, to approve the allocation of incentive funds out of that Affordable Housing Incentive Program. And that largely concerns the waiver and reimbursement of fees, applicable fees, as set forth in the incentive policy, and do so for the affordable housing to be constructed in Block 1 at the Timber Sky final block plat. Now, a couple of important distinctions to be made here. This is not the bond fund. This is entirely separate from the bond fund. This incentive policy has been in place for a while, and it has been used from time to time. It has not been budgeted on a regular basis, which is exactly why we're in front of you asking for a mid-year reallocation out of the budget, and that requires council approval. That incentive fund is put into place for projects just like this to help incentivize through a reduction of fees projects that have significant affordable housing components to them. I think the applicant is here and can speak in detail as to the affordable housing component of this project. It has been referenced before this council on multiple occasions. The request for some financial assistance by the city has been made on multiple occasions. And going back to my involvement here, and an important clarification is our ushering through of this request to you, council, is not at all the product of effective lobbying by any developer. This is coming to you because we frankly feel it is the right thing to do, and we feel this project is a very worthy project and a good candidate for this assistance. And that's why this matter is in front of you this evening. I think at this point I will turn it over to Brandy to talk a little bit about the mechanics of the budget transfer, and then we can answer questions, and then we can turn it over to the applicant and others who may want to speak to this. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council. Brandy Suda, you're serving as your city's finance director. So as City Manager Clifton mentioned, this request is to approve a fiscal year 2023-24 budget adjustment to reallocate $1.1 million of the city's general fund contingency funds to enhance funding available for affordable housing incentive program. And so how does a budget adjustment work? With the council approval, staff will reduce the general fund's contingency budget and increase the Housing and Community Services Fund budget specifically for the Affordable Housing Incentive Program by $1.1 million. And then we will transfer $1.1 million of resources from the general fund to the Housing and Community Services Fund via a revenue transfer. So per state statutes, the city is not allowed to increase our total budget once it's been adopted. However, cities are allowed to reallocate budget appropriation between departments with council approval. If one, the money is available, and two, if it is in the public interest and based on demonstrated need. So one, the money is available. As part of the fiscal year 2023-24 adopted budget, council approved a contingency set aside in the general fund. A portion of that contingency relates to our public safety personnel retirement system set aside related to our PSPRS contingency reserve policy as part of when we refinanced both our police and fire pension plans. We set up a contingency in the first 5 years into the general fund to allow us to, because as this was the first time we had ever done this, to set aside money should the fund, either of those funds become below 100% funded, we could easily access that contingency to then get those funds back to 100% funding. Currently, our police and fire plans are both at about 105% funding as of June 30th of 2022. We have not gotten the latest reports as of June 30th of 2023, but we do know that we have determined that the PSPRS plan did perform very well last year. They met their rate of return projections, and we do not anticipate needing to utilize this $1.1 million to send to PSPRS in the next year, during this fiscal year. In the past years, when this funding has not been needed, we have repurposed it for other one-time needs in a future fiscal year. And then number two, related to public interest and need, is met with our declaration of a housing emergency. And while the Affordable Housing Incentive Program was provided $130,000 of new money in the fiscal year 23-24 budget, this year staff have received several requests to utilize this funding, and the requests are not lining up with our traditional fiscal year budget process. So staff has discussed our ability to increase this funding in the current fiscal year to assist with affordable housing in our community. So instead of waiting for fiscal year 24-25 budget adoption process to add funds to this program, our staff is seeking council approval of this item to increase the program in the current fiscal year. I'm available for any questions related to this budget amendment or adjustment. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandy. Council, are there any questions for Brandy or for City Manager? Yes, Councilmember Matthews and then Councilmember House.
Thank you, Mayor. Mine is more of just a comment. I'm definitely going to be in favor of this request. We do have, and I look forward to learning more about this in our upcoming budget retreat, but we do have this policy to incentivize builders to bring us some affordable housing product, and maybe even market rate, but I know affordable housing. And we are in a housing crisis. We do have bond money that's going to be available soon. And we do the math on 400 to 500 units is the hope for $5 million. That's a really small number, $12,500 if you broke it down per unit. But this project specifically is bringing 224 affordable housing rental units for a cost of only $4,900 per unit. I don't see the downside to this. And unless we decide to take that incentive line item out of our budget, I recently came across another DA that talks about utilizing this incentive. So we definitely either need to take it off or fund it. And because of all the reasons why you just stated, we can increase the budget, we're in the middle of the year, but we can reallocate it. We have this incentive, it needs to be funded. The housing crisis is our number one biggest crisis, in my opinion, that we have in this city. I don't want to wait a year to fund something, so absolutely, I think this is a slam dunk, and it's going to bring, I think how I understand it, 224 units in 18 months. I mean, that is critical and just mind-blowing. So I just wanted to give those comments out, and I'll yield it over to Councilmember House.
Thank you, Councilmember Matthews, and thank you, Mayor, and thank you both for that presentation. Of course, I am strongly in support of this, but I did have a question. So on the agenda item, it states that it's anticipated that this incentive fund would continue to have budgetary allocations into the future. And the city manager, you referenced that this was a fund that's available from time to time. So I'm just wondering what the process is to make allocations like this, or prioritizing this fund opportunity more permanent.
Yeah, thank you, Council Member. The matter has already been broached with our budget team prior to this evening's meeting, and it's very much our intent to see this fund, this policy, pardon me, continue to be funded on a regular basis. So that's the intention, and it's exactly for this kind of purpose. So it's a very good question. I don't know what the amount would be. We'll certainly wrestle with that, but it's something that really needs to happen. So thank you.
Thank you. Council, are there any additional questions for staff before I invite the applicant up to share any information? All right, seeing none, I do invite the applicant to share any additional information that they would like.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council, Lindsay Shuby with law firm of Gamage and Burnham, 40 North Central in Phoenix, Arizona. And this is the least number of words I think you will have heard from me on an agenda item. Kevin Sturgeon is also on Teams on behalf of Roars, and Walter Crutchfield on behalf of Vintage is in the audience as well. But all I'm going to say is thank you. There's a problem, and the city manager, council, everyone stepped up to help, and we are thankful. This incentive fund is fantastic. It's a great tool in your toolbox. I'll say this incentive fund, coupled with your code modification process that you get for 100% affordable housing, are two great tools that you have in your toolbox here. So when we were presented with this project, or when the city was, there were no funds, and you guys found them. And so with that, we just say thank you. We're excited about this project coming. Councilmember Matthews, the only thing I'd say is it's 221, not 224. So I know. I'm just going to go home. No, but I wanted to make sure that was clear on the record. But on behalf of Roars, Kevin Sturgeon at Roars, and myself, this was a very, Kevin has been speaking with staff for a year on how to access money from the incentive fund, and just thank you, and stand for any questions you have. But this is a great policy, and I do want to clarify, the Roars project, it does have an approved site plan, conditionally approved on 3 modifications. That modification package has been submitted and will come in front of you, hopefully within a month or so. So we're not quite shovel ready. I want to make sure we clarify also that on the record, but we're darn close. There is a conditionally approved site plan for 221 units. Our civil permits, I believe, are just about approved, and our building permits are about to go in. So we're very excited to get all these units to market. With that, stand for questions. And also Kevin from Roars is online if you have any questions specifically of him.
Thank you very much. And can you remind council and the audience what the area median income percentage is for this project and the length of affordability?
Mayor, thank you so much for that question. Yes, this is a 60% AMI or less project. In the development agreement, we are required to do 190 units. Again, we have a conditionally approved site plan, just need 3 minor modifications for 221 units we're very excited about. And as you know, the state funding is always tied to a 15-year term. We came in here requesting a 15-year term in our development agreement. You guys asked us for 30, and you will have 30 years of affordable housing at 60% AMI or less for 100% of the units.
Thank you. Sorry about that little technical glitch. Council, are there any questions for Councilmember Matthews?
Thank you, Mayor. Just another comment. I've heard this all along, but just recently, someone was criticizing how we get like 30 affordable units out of a development or 35 or something. So this is a really big deal. This is like 50 projects, development projects with their little 10%. And so I know it's been a rough road. And I just want to thank you all for your not giving up and working with us to find a solution. And so I appreciate it, and I appreciate the 221 units. I'll have to find 3 units somewhere, because I've been really bragging about that, because that really puts a dent in our goals in the affordable housing level. So I just wanted to say thank you, and thank you for your patience and not losing faith.
Thank you.
Councilmember Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to add a comment. You know, the housing crisis that we're facing, this is our problem, the whole city. So anyone that comes here, it's part of their appreciate the fact that you came in, you tried to figure it out, you did, and you're giving us some of those units that we need. It's not everything that we need, but every little bit counts. And so with the 221 that we're getting from you, we can subtract that from the total that we need. And for 30 years, that's huge, yeah. That's gonna help a whole bunch of folks. And so you all should be really proud of the work that you've done. So you can go ahead and give yourself a pat on the back, and our staff can do that too. So thank you all so much, appreciate it.
Council, are there additional questions for either staff or the applicant before we move to public comment? All right, Stacy, can you facilitate public comment for us?
Again, happy to, Mayor. Our public commenter is Andy Fernandez.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that bunch of BS. It's a bunch of garbage, a bunch of crap. Now, the scenario is, I'm an Army Corps of Engineers. I was born here in the city of Flagstaff. And Mrs. Harris, you're mistaken. 221 units at this rate is nepotism by the corruption of the federal and the state governments manipulating scenarios. Now, we're here in 1999, we were affordable housing. Like I was stating about the bond, the $34 million bond for teachers. I was all behind both of these because I said, hey, you know, born and raised here, I know a lot of my friends of the family that could use this assistance. Wow, amazing. The government is actually doing stuff for the people. I was one of those sheep that was blind until back in 95, when they were talking about the water increase, which only one neighborhood out of the 18 regions in this area was going to pay. I said, that's corruption. That's not the United States Army, which I served in as Army Corps of Engineers, means keyword united. Everyone shares their part of the load. But no, this manipulation is corrupt. Now the scenario here, we had the first affordable housings on 3rd Street. There was 5 units. One was a nurse, single mother. Well, I don't think she was even a mother. There was an individual, he was only been here 2 years, a male. How are these people getting houses that have only been here 2 or 4 years when you have 30 or 40 years worth of people, 60 years that have been waiting to get on into their own home that they owned because of the corruption of you guys? That's why. So we have a situation here where, let's get back to, say, the $34 million bond. I was behind all these bonds. That's why I always say no on bonds, because it's always a money grab, an STM. If you can substantiate equals a T2, then you can manipulate any sucker, any sheep. I used to be a sheep until I realized, hey, this is corrupt. You know, I voted for that GOP cartel garbage, Reagan. He's the one that inflated the monopoly scenario. We had 7, count them, 7 bookstores here. Barnes & Noble came in by the approval of the council. Boom. Within 8 years, all 7 are gone, including McGaw's over there next to the Monte Vista. That's appalling. A year later, okay, let's bring in Harkins Theater. I said, no, we have 4 other theaters here, plus the NAU. Well, no, the city, they're getting bribes, they're getting kickbacks on the backside. Boom, Harkins shows up. What happens? Yeah, exactly. The others went out of business. Then the deal a few years later, Harkins was manipulated with the city. Let's locate this place over here, and we'll give the DMV another money grab, corruption. Now we have a stupid situation here where I guess that's the Chamber of Commerce is manipulating another scenario with the nepotism of the cartels, which is the GOP and their city council planning and zoning, which manipulates these scenarios because you can manipulate prices through the county assessor's office. That's illegal. The county assesses property value, so you pay a certain property tax, but not here. We can exact, in 1998 was the affordable housing scenario, they were talked about it. It came back a year and a half later. The housing was $65,000 in my geographical area. In 7 years, $450,000. That's a bunch of garbage, over $420,000 more. Regardless, this is ridiculous, vote it down.
Thank you, Mr. Fernandez. Stacy, do we have any additional public comment?
No, Mayor, we do not.
All right. So Councilmember Sweet has a comment.
Thank you, Mayor. Bear with me. I'm not in my normal room here. So first off, I'd like to thank City Manager and the staff for bringing this to us. And I realize, you know, I read the emails, and I do realize that we are doing things a little bit different right now. We are doing this halfway through the year. But the last time I checked, we are in a housing crisis. Our community has wanted us to declare that. We did declare that. And I know that all of us on council and staff, we take this very seriously. This has impacted our community. I hear it every day, as I'm sure many of us in the room do as well. Businesses are having a difficult time recruiting. Our essential services like police and fire can't recruit candidates because of our lack of housing, including affordable housing. And just the other day, I was told a story of some of our community members and families living in their vehicles while working jobs in Flagstaff because they can't afford or even find a place to rent. So, you know, again, our community has identified this. We're working on it, and I certainly appreciate everyone's efforts on this project, and I will definitely be in support of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Sweet. Councilmember House.
Thank you, Mayor. So I also want to thank all those that have been involved in making this a possibility, including our staff. One of the things that we talk about often is working towards creative solutions to our multitude of community concerns, crises, and issues. This is an example of that in practice. This is us taking a really creative approach to make something happen for our community that our community desperately needs, and that's greatly appreciated. We have a 10-year housing plan that calls for just under 8,000 new homes to meet the needs of our community, including 700 plus affordable units. This is bringing 221 of those units to our market. That is not an insignificant thing, and that is not something to be overlooked or overshadowed in the efforts that it took to make this possible. So it's greatly appreciated that we are moving in this direction and making something possible that for years within our community has not been. And that's not insignificant either. So I am just grateful for all the effort that went into making this a possibility, from the development team to the ROARS team that is bringing this development to Flagstaff, to the city team that worked creatively to make this work and found a solution when it was looking like there might not be one. That is a remarkable feat, and I am extremely grateful for it, and so I look forward to our further conversation on this and the vote. Thank you.
Councilmember McCarthy.
I'll be brief. I'm very supportive.
Vice Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Becky Daggett. I just want to add my firm and committed support to pursuing this strategy. A lot of people have put a lot of hard work and a lot of brain capital into bringing us to this moment where we can achieve this outcome. And I think it's something to be celebrated. I'm hoping that it will be something that rings loud and clear across the nation. Obviously, Flagstaff is not the only community dealing with affordable housing issues. And this sort of creative solution that we're all getting behind, I hope we have a unanimous vote this evening, is going to send a message. And I hope there's some horizontal learning that can occur in other places that are struggling and hurting as well. And I'm proud to be a part of this vast and diverse team of forward thinkers and forward doers who are going to show other communities how this can be done. And I really want to give a shout out to our city leadership and our city manager team, but also to our development partners involved in this. It's been a long conversation, and I'm very, very happy that we're going to see shovels in the ground here shortly for these 221, not 190, but 221 units. Very, very pleased.
Thank you. I too would just like to thank our city manager and staff for the creative approach to finding a way to bring this project and to bring these 221 units forward. As we all are, I'm told every day that the cost of housing in Flagstaff is the #1 impediment to employee retention. And if we want to have good jobs for residents of Flagstaff, we also need to have safe and affordable workforce housing. I want to remind us all and the public that this is a 100% affordable project, and it's at 60% or lower AMI, which for a family of 4, I'm looking at it now, means an income of $54,540. So this is a very important segment of our population, people who are working hard to make it here, but aren't making enough to afford the rents that are currently being charged. So I just want to state my support for this as well. And I see that Councilmember House has a question.
No, Mayor, I withdrew.
Wonderful, thank you. And it looked like Councilmember Matthews wanted to make a motion.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I do. And Sterling, correct me if I'm going to list both items, correct?
My recommendation would be that you do.
No.
Go ahead, Mayor. Thanks.
Oh, they want to split it. Want to split
Yes, we need to have 2 motions. One, the first is just for the budget appropriation.
All right, then. I move to approve the transfer of budget appropriations from the general fund contingency account to the Housing and Community Service Fund's Affordable Housing Incentive Program in the amount of $1,100,000.
Do I have a second?
This is Councilmember House. I'll
Thank
second.
you. Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? All right, wonderful. And going down to item number 2, do I have a motion to direct the city manager and staff to approve the allocation of incentive funds for affordable housing to be constructed in Block 1 of the Timber Sky final block plat?
So moved.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, that carries. Thank you very much. So we're moving down to item number 8B, consideration and adoption of ordinance number 2023-21. Staff, do you have anything for us?
I do not. I'm just here to answer any questions, and the applicant is also here.
Thank you. Council, do you have any questions of staff or the applicant?
I do, Mayor.
Okay, go ahead.
This is Jim McCarthy. Last time when we made the motion, and I'm not sure which of these items it comes under, we agreed that there would be no gates except for that one on bordering Route 66. Has that been incorporated in here somewhere?
That has been incorporated. That was part of the zoning map amendment, so the next item on the agenda, but we updated that ordinance to have condition 2 spell out that we're eliminating the gates at the driveway entrance. We're maintaining the required fire access only emergency gate.
And then there was some discussion about electric charging within the garages. Can you comment on that?
We discussed, the applicant has proposed to wire the internal garages for charging. It was not part of the development agreement, so we're working with the applicant. We'd both like to add that to the development agreement. That's the third item on the agenda, so.
I guess I could talk to it later, but since I have your attention,
Yes.
yeah, I'd be in favor of saying let's provide the wiring, but they don't need necessarily the whole charging station. That way, if somebody wants a charging station, the wiring is there. That's a minimal cost compared to the whole charging station. So
It's much more feasible to provide that infrastructure now in the original construction than to try and retrofit and put that power in later. So it makes a lot of sense to have the wiring in now.
you're taking words out of my mouth.
Just great minds think alike, right?
Thank you, Councilmember McCarthy. Are there any additional questions? All right, we have public comment, and Stacy, if you would facilitate that for us.
Sure thing, Mayor. Our public commenter is Andy Fernandez.
This is the annexation from the Timber Sky. Annexation.
Okay, the scenario here is, again, collaboration and collusion and lies. Now, I see we're getting some people all riled up here, so they're trying to show the force of security. The scenario here is that This lie of affordable housing has been a lie. The housing nepotism scam is facilitated on a scenario to embellish all these other regions of the city. And even though it's appalling because we have people who are saying that they're all for this, but then we have people who are hypocrites. Councilmember Aslan, he was stating that he was interested in facilitating voting no on 480 because this would have the same exact effect of urban sprawl, explosion of growth everywhere. And Proposition 480 stipulates that, actually it was even in the newspaper where it stipulates that this particular segment, part one, is only to put the hospital there, make it sound really nice. But the problem is the taxpayers 12 years ago approved for an open space, right, in that same smack of territory. So now why does the planning and zoning, the city council, Chamber of Commerce, and the Northern Arizona Hospital decide they want to put it right there anyway? Because it's all corruption and collusion. Now my scenario here, again, stipulating about scenarios of collusion, you know, say like I told people here, planning and zoning have been bought off, so the Chamber of Commerce. I mean, well, the Chamber of Commerce is part of that nepotism of the cartel. But the scenario of the county assessor's office, who assesses property tax, again, like I said, affordable housing, 1999, I was all for it. When I found out the truth, I said no. 2000 to 2006, a $55,000 to $60,000 house started selling for, what? $430,000? Wow. I'm a realtor, a parasite. I'm gonna go sell to Californians or people from other affluent areas because the locals here can't afford it. So I tell them 3-bedroom, two bath, crime, civil tickets, nothing. Hospital. We also have a certified school district. Everything certified. All the amenities of a big city. Come on down. This was back in 2003 for a mere $285,000 to $320,000. But 3 years before, that same house, those same housing units at that same area would cost you less. 4th Street, Sunnyside, Greenlaw, same house, the same age. Now, the white lining segregation manipulation scenario facilitated by Brown versus Board of Education, when you build a new subdivision, you can also build new schools to segregate to keep the white people away from the minorities. Same houses, same size. How come Greenlaw sells for $85,000 more than the Sunnyside area? And this is back 22 years ago. And also that was the area that had to pay the water bill for all the other 18 communities. That's corruption.
Thank you. Do we have any additional comment?
No, Mayor, we do not.
Okay. Council, would someone like to make a motion?
Mayor, I move to read ordinance number 2023-21 by title only for the final time.
Second.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, City Clerk, please.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Flagstaff, Arizona, extending and increasing the corporate limits of the City of Flagstaff, Coconino County, State of Arizona, pursuant to the provisions of Title IX, Chapter 4, Arizona Revised Statutes, by annexing certain land totaling approximately 1.82 acres located at 2445 South Woody Mountain Road, which land is contiguous to the existing corporate limits of the City of Flagstaff, and establishing city zoning for said land as rural residential RR with a resource protection overlay.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to adopt?
Mayor, I move to adopt ordinance number 2023-21.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, that carries. We're moving down to item number 8C, consideration and adoption of ordinance number 2023-22. Staff, is there any information you want to share on this one?
I think any information I wanted to share was discussed in the previous item, that we did amend that second condition as part of the rezone to eliminate the gates at the entry drive.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments from council? Would anyone like to make a motion?
Mayor, I move to read ordinance number 2023-22 by title only for the final time.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I will second that.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? All right, City Clerk?
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Flagstaff amending the Flagstaff zoning map to rezone approximately 13.01 acres of real property generally located at 2445 South Woody Mountain Road, APN 112-01-712, from the rural residential RR zone with a resource protection overlay RPO to the high-density residential HR zone with a resource protection overlay RPO, providing for severability, authority for clerical corrections, and establishing an effective date.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adopt?
Mayor, I move to adopt ordinance number 2023-22.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I will second that.
I'll second.
We have 2 seconds.
Miranda
That's
beat me.
fourths. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Moving down to D, consideration and adoption of resolution number 2023-50, a resolution authorizing the execution of the development agreement between City of Flagstaff and VP 66 and Woody Mountain LLC for Live Timber Sky related to the development of approximately 13.01 acres of real property generally located at 2445 South Woody Mountain Road. And staff, it looks like you have something for us.
I have a very short presentation. Alexandra Pucciarelli, current planning manager. This development agreement is tied to that previous annexation and rezoning request. The purpose of this agreement is to, it focuses on off-site sewer improvements that are necessary for the development, as well as off-site roadway improvements. That includes that proportional share of the traffic signal at Woody Mountain Road and West 66. It also includes sustainability standards, such as materials management, encouraging the residents to recycle, on-demand electric vehicle rentals, electric vehicle charging, and as discussed, not only will they have the ports kind of outside that you can plug into, but it'll also be wired for charging in the garages. Bicycle parking, electrified units, so the units will use all electric and not be plumbed for gas for heating or cooking, things like that. A pollinator-friendly landscaping and electric bicycles for short-term rental use. Council has many options. You can approve the development agreement as presented. You can add additional stipulations or modify or delete terms. You can remand the development agreement back to staff for additional negotiations with the owner, or you may deny the development agreement. And that is all I have, and I'm here to answer any questions, and the applicant is also here.
Thank you.
Mayor McCarthy. Mayor.
Yes, Councilmember McCarthy.
For staff, just a clarification, you mentioned the electric charging, not the charging units, but wiring for in the garages. Is that part of the agreement, or do we need to add that on as an amendment?
I would like to add that this is a draft agreement, so when we fill it in and put all the attachments, I'd like to include that stipulation in the development agreement.
Okay, so we're formally approving the DA tonight, so anything we want to add, better do it now. Okay,
Let's add.
thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Does the applicant have anything to share?
Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members, again, Lindsay Shuby with the law firm of Gamage and Burnham, 40 North Central in Phoenix, Arizona. Again, very few words. No, we're in agreement with the development agreement, and we also are okay with the addition of wiring the garages. As our discussion last time, it's in the residential code, but it's not in the multifamily code. So we were all under the impression last time, we did plan on wiring the garages, and we agreed to the addition of that in the development agreement. But with that, just respectfully request approval.
Thank you. Council, are there any additional questions or comments?
I'll make a motion when you're ready.
Okay, thank you. Stacy, are there any public comments?
Not for this item, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. I will entertain a motion, Councilmember McCarthy.
Well, thank you, Mayor. It's my pleasure. I move that we read resolution number 2023-50 by title only, with the addition that the wires in the garages will be wired for EV stations, not including EV stations, but just wired for them.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, it carries. City Clerk.
Resolution of the Flagstaff City Council authorizing a development agreement between the City of Flagstaff and VP 66 and Woody Mountain LLC for the Live Timber Sky related to the development of approximately 13.01 acres of real property generally located at 2445 South Woody Mountain Road and establishing an effective date as amended.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adopt?
Mayor, I move to adopt a resolution 2023-50 as amended.
I'll second.
Thank you. Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion carries. And the presentation on wildland fire mitigation and management it has been postponed to the October 17th meeting. And next is a discussion and direction regarding possible joint council water commission meeting.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Erin Young, Water Resources Manager. I am the project manager for our water, wastewater, and reclaimed water rate study, and I'm working on scheduling some meetings. And I'm here to check or to kind of feel out if you guys are okay having a joint meeting with your appointed Water Commission members on a date when Stantec will be here in person. The date would be October 23rd. It's a Monday, and we would schedule 2 hours of your time with the agenda scheduled for no more than 90 minutes. I'm happy to field any questions. I don't necessarily want to over-explain. We could keep it as simple as if you're accepting a joint meeting and if the date works for you. But I'm happy to explain more if you'd like.
Can I ask what the time?
The time could be anytime between 1 and 5 p.m. for 2 hours.
Are there any questions or comments, council? All right,
Mayor,
is there, yes, go ahead.
I don't have a question, I just have a comment. If possible, if we could do it later in the afternoon would be better, after 2.
Councilmember House, you have a comment?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'm similarly, I have 2 other commitments on that day, one at 1 and one at 3:30. So it may be hard for me to make it there, but I'm not opposed to having the joint meeting, even if I have to miss it because of those other commitments.
Thank you. Is there anyone who would not support having a joint meeting? Okay. So, Aaron, I think you have your answer. I think that we're in favor of having a joint meeting, and we will all try very hard to be there.
Wonderful. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, future agenda item requests. Future agenda item request, FAIR, as they're called. This is a request by Councilmember House to place on a future agenda a discussion about the walk-friendly community designation, the levels within the designation, and working toward the next level. Councilmember House, would you like to give us just a little bit of information about this?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I am just looking for support to have a further conversation on this. As we were discussing some of the walkability and biking infrastructure and so forth, particularly in our downtown areas, there was a conversation about how, we pride ourselves on being a walkable community, but there's so much of our infrastructure that does not align with that. And so during that conversation, I looked and saw that our city is actually ranked as a silver level, I believe, walk-friendly community designation, and that's a designation that goes up to, I think, platinum, maybe. So I'm just curious to see what it took to achieve the silver level and what it takes to move to the next, and if the city is able to pursue that.
Thank you. And we're not going to have discussion here tonight, but I see that Councilmember Matthews has a statement, has a comment.
I'm sorry, Mayor, I just have another FAIR. I was trying to put it in the chat, so I don't have a comment about this, but I do support the FAIR that Councilmember House says.
Okay.
I
Thank
support
you.
Ms. House's proposal.
Great, thank you. It looks like we have public comment on this item.
Yes, Mayor, we do. I have a comment from Dapper Dre.
Howdy, Mayor and Councilmember Sweet virtually, as well as Vice Mayor Aslan, council members, staff, thanks for hearing. Just want to iterate that it's awesome to see Councilmember House bringing that to the forefront, checking in how we get these designations, why we get these designations, and anything that helps walkability anywhere in town, but especially in downtown, is a benefit for everyone. And I'd like to see not just stipulations and check marks and words being put up on screens in the form of mitigation, adaptation, equity, but actually seeing infrastructure kind of follow that. We can get the designation, we can get silver medals, gold medals, platinum medals, but if you're not out there using the infrastructure on a regular basis, like a person who has limited mobility is, you might not see some of that. You might just see the paper trail of the designation getting checked off, the line items getting approved and that kind of thing, but it's always fun to go experience it, check it for yourself. And I'll bring up one thing that I hear a lot from motorists, and I'm sure this will be coming into question when that designation comes up, is what about the snow? Everybody talks about bike lanes and car travel. What about the snow? How are they going to clear it? How are they going to make sure that it's viable for motor vehicles to get by when it snows? What about walking? What about the snow? You leave it up to private property owners to clear sidewalks. You leave it up to private property owners to make these things happen when sidewalks are city purview. In my eyes, there's still probably cinders on most of the sidewalks up by Josephine's. There's cinders in a lot of different places for most of the season where there's not snow. And that's difficult for people with limited mobility issues. Sidewalks are narrow. If you're on a wheelchair, you're not going to be able to cross easily with folks, so that means you're not going to go out as much. You're not going to enjoy the community. Wider sidewalks in places where a lot of people use sidewalks, probably a good idea, but yet we always have to make sure that motor vehicles are the first things that can get to places, make sure that motor vehicles are the first things that get parking places, make sure that motor vehicles are the first things that get planned for, and everybody else can figure out what they need to do. They don't get prioritized. They don't get any kind of extension and infrastructure approval, and yet we all walk, hopefully. I mean, most of us do, 99%. So hopefully walkability is on the focus. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, so Councilmember House, you have the support of enough council members to place this item on a future agenda item, on a future agenda. And see, so Councilmember Matthews, we can take your fare down on item number 12. Stacy, is there any additional public participation?
No, Mayor, there is not.
Thank you. So informational items to, from, mayor, council, and staff, and future agenda item requests. Councilmember Matthews.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, this is another attempt. I've tried this a couple of times, but this is the first time as a fair. So I'm requesting that we consider adding the 10-year housing plan, because of our housing crisis, to the weekly agenda policy impact listing that shows the connection between currently our priority-based budget priorities and objectives, our carbon neutrality plan, and our regional plan. I would like to add the 10-year housing plan as well.
Thank you, Councilmember. Did you have any other items?
Not at this time.
Thanks. Councilmember Harris.
I would support Councilmember Matthews' request, but I don't have any other items other than that. Thank you.
Vice Mayor, do you have any informational items?
I'm good this evening, Mayor. Thank you.
Councilmember McCarthy.
I believe the city attorney has a comment, and then I'll go ahead.
Sorry about that. I appreciated the fare from Councilmember Matthews, Councilmember Harris. That'll just kind of go in the hopper, or we'll address it administratively if we can and get back. But tonight we won't be asking for whether or not there are council members that support it. So thank you.
Well,
Councilmember Sweet.
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Councilmember McCarthy, did you have something?
I just want to say in regard to Ms. Matthews' proposal, I don't have any comment.
Councilmember Howe.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to share again that the Out of the Darkness Community Walk is coming up on Saturday, this Saturday now, the 7th at Buffalo Park. Check-in is at 8:30 and the walk starts at 9 a.m.
Thank you, Councilmember. City Manager, do you have anything?
No, thank you, Mayor. Enjoy your conference.
Thank you. All right, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.